So the steps we took over a 9-month period to develop a strategy, we were very clear from the beginning what the goal was and the process to get there. And what happened in between was resident driven. Our role was to facilitate. And right away after our first meeting, I had developed a work plan where I had every meeting and everything planned. And wouldn't you know it, which was great, the first meeting was develop the vision or the definition of a strong neighborhood. Well, that took us the first 3 meetings, the first 3 months. So all of a sudden, we adjusted, but that was okay. So every meeting we started reminding the task force of the 4 steps that were involved in the process. We reviewed what they accomplished the month before, and we always left each meeting with the task force knowing what they had the opportunity that they could come back at the next meeting and review what they wanted to accomplish. We called it heartburn. So whenever residents made a decision at the end of one meeting, we always inform them at the next meeting we'll review, and so if you have heartburn, we can make changes, because it was very important for us to get consensus throughout the whole process, which we did. So the definition became a vision for all neighborhoods, and the group also defined elements for a strong neighborhood, and they later aligned all the strategies that they developed with these elements. So in partnership with the Western University, the residents then designed an assessment tool that we would measure where all neighborhoods stood against the vision. So with Western's assistance, they identified metrics for each element, and then they further developed a conversation tool that they took out to their neighborhoods and neighborhood groups to tackle the more qualitative and specific areas that there were gaps in the metrics. We were very conscious not to compare or pit neighborhoods against neighborhoods. This was not what this process was about. If anything, we compared where neighborhoods stood against the overall city, but we did not compare neighborhoods against each other. So now that they had a vision, they knew where each neighborhood stood against that vision. They then developed the strategies, both citywide for all neighborhoods and targeted for specific neighborhoods. And finally, they developed an implementation plan to implement the strategies over a 5-year period. So how did we resource it? So we did not have an additional budget for this. So as administration, we have budgets in different departments. So in different service areas, we have budgets for external catering, photocopying. So we used everything in every department's budget, internal lines. All the staff you saw, they volunteered their evening hours. Most were management there, and we did this on whatever we had in our base budget in our administrative lines. However, once the strategy was approved, brought to council by the residents, and they approved it, I think it was in the 2nd year of implementation, after we had showed some quick wins, the council actually added $100,000 to my base budget, which then allowed me to implement some of the key strategies that required additional funding. This did not fund staff for me. This funded externally projects that residents were driving. So LSNS became a part of the work we do as a corporation, and it laid the groundwork for future strategies and plans. So you can see LSNS in everything from our new London plan, the shift to age-friendly London, and most recently in our city strategic plan. So after all that work, through those 9 months, the final outcome was the London Strengthening Neighbourhood Strategy and 5-year implementation plan, which was endorsed in early 2010 by City Council. And this document became the vehicle for collective action, steering all of us to actions that would contribute to a better quality of life in all of our neighborhoods. So how we implemented it, as I said in the slide that I just talked about, this was grounded and incorporated into the daily work of all the different departments and areas. So as management, we included those strategies that we supported or that were aligned with the work that we had to do as part of implementation into our strategic plans and into actually our performance plans. And then at the last LSNS Resident Task Force meeting, a number of residents, I think there were about 20 or 25, volunteered to be an implementation team over the next 5 years. And that number came and go. In the first few years, they met monthly. And what they did is, it was kind of nice because they held us accountable internally, but they also held each other and a number of the resident-driven teams that were out in the community with other partners implementing the strategies. When they first finalized the plan, they held several community meetings at a citywide and also neighborhood level, and this is where they invited stakeholders. I think a part we forgot to highlight for you is when we brought the resident task force together, it was only residents. We did not allow organizations, not-for-profits, community groups. This was only residents. Of course, sometimes residents come with many hats, but the hat they wore in this meeting was as a resident of a neighborhood. So this is when they then touched base with all their community groups and networks, because they were key and central in implementing the strategies. And of course, part of the implementation plan the residents had done was to identify all the key players in each of the strategies.